Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled The American. Let's get straight into the storyline. Set in Sweden, we are shown a man named Jack. Jack has just finished playing with a woman named Bella. After they finish the scene, suddenly, a sniper shot, out of nowhere, started aiming to kill them both.
What's going on?
Under such circumstances, Jack, who is a professional assassin, quickly fired back at the people who were about to kill him. He managed to kill one of them.
Jack.
Go to the house and call the police.
However, he began to suspect that Bella was behind the murder plan. Finally, Jack decides to shoot the woman directly, then continue to finish off the people who tried to kill him. Long story short, after surviving the assassination attempt, Jack decided to go to a country, Rome, Italy, to meet his best friend, Felix. Felix is an agent from headquarters, who gives missions to every hitman agent in the field. During the meeting, Felix explained that Bella was not part of the people who had chased Jack in Sweden, and it was unfortunate that she had to be killed in the attack. For now, Felix asks Jack to move to a remote place called Castelvecchio, because Jack will meet with other agents to carry out new missions there.
Town on the map. Castelvecchio.
Using his antique car, Jack began to rush towards the city. Arriving at the destination city, Jack, who was exhausted after a long journey, then went to rest in the rent that Felix had prepared. The next morning, he continued to travel around to see every corner of the city until he finally contacted Felix again to ask for an explanation of the mission he was going to do. At that moment, Felix asked Jack to make a sniper assembly that had to be completed in less than a week because the weapon would be used by other agents to kill potential targets who would come to the city. Right after he received the request, a priest named Benedetto suddenly came to see Jack and asked about his purpose for coming to the city. Finally, Jack began to introduce himself as a photographer who would travel to several places to make an article.
Seem to come from the Francesi.
Long story short, a few moments after returning from drinking at the pastor's place, Jack, who had just arrived at the rent, finally began to continue physical training while watching every corner of the city that would later be used as a hiding place. He was done with that, and then he started hanging out at a cafe to meet a woman named Matilda, who turned out to be an agent assigned by Felix to take orders for weapons that he would use later. Finally, they began to discuss the completeness of the rifle that Matilda wanted. Matilda explained that the rifle must have a magazine capacity with 10 bullet stocks, as well as a range that can shoot between 150 to 175 meters, including a rifle that must be equipped with a silencer.
Range?
150 to 175 meters.
Targets?
1.
You want a weapon with the firing capacity of a submachine gun and the range of a rifle.
After a brief meeting with Matilda, Jack went to the post office to pick up a package containing materials to assemble the weapon. Once the package was picked up, Jack began assembling the weapons one by one, using his talent. However, over time, Jack, who suddenly lost the mood to finish his work, chose to continue assembling weapons the next morning. Finally, he went looking for entertainment by visiting a place. The next day, because his work had been delayed the night, Jack began to move towards the car service to look for some of the materials needed to assemble the gun.
Quanto costa?
However, after returning from the workshop, he accidentally crossed paths with a comfort woman named Clara, who had played with him the previous night. Jack, who had been satisfied by Clara last night, intended to invite the woman to meet again. Arriving at the rented house, Jack, who was already chased by the deadline, continued to assemble by slightly changing the rifle to match the order Matilda wanted. Finally, the rifle that had been painstakingly assembled for days was finished perfectly. The next morning, Jack, who had finished testing, was unfortunately not satisfied because his homemade weapons still had some flaws. Sometime after completing the trial, Jack, who missed Clara, began visiting entertainment venues to meet her. However, Clara, the comfort woman, was unfortunately not working that night. However, right after he left the entertainment venue, a mysterious person suddenly appeared who secretly started watching his movements from a distance. Jack, who realized that he was being followed, decided to stop by a shop. He observed someone watching him from a distance, and not long after, the mysterious person began to disappear suddenly. Long story short, the next day, after again inviting Matilda to meet, they finally started to go to the forest area to try out the rifle that Jack had perfected.
And expand.
I'd like...
Press or the fulcrum's 2 centimeters forward from the grip, but that should... You'll find it easy.
Once tried, Matilda was satisfied because Jack's rifle was very suitable for what Matilda wanted. However, the problem was that the binoculars were not optimal, so she asked Jack to improve the binoculars to be more accurate. After he drove Matilda to the station, Jack, who missed the caress of women, especially Clara's caress, began to go back to visit entertainment venues. For once, he finally got to meet Clara. After being satisfied with earthly pleasures, Jack, who had just arrived at the rent, then began to perfect his rifle. In fact, he stayed up late at night repairing the rifle. Then, in the morning, when he was having breakfast at a cafe, Jack accidentally crossed paths with Clara. Clara, who had secretly had feelings for Jack, suddenly started asking him out on dates on days when she was off.
But perhaps we can see each other soon.
The usual place.
When Jack is about to return to the rent, he is again followed by a mysterious person who secretly keeps watching him from behind. It was a hitman from the Swedish branch who was sent to kill Jack. Jack realized that he was being followed. Cleverly, Jack began to deceive the hitman named Hunter and targeted him back, so a shootout between the two hitmen began to occur. Moments after the shootout, Hunter, who ran away because he ran out of bullets, was easily chased by Jack and successfully killed. Right after Hunter was killed, Jack immediately contacted Felix to explain about the Swedish hitmen who had managed to track his location. However, despite the danger, Felix still asked Jack to be in the city before his work was completely finished. The next day, after Jack finished dating and spending time with Clara, he began to be careful, even to the point of watching every move of people he considered suspicious. He was afraid that he was still being followed by the Swedish hitmen. The next morning, Jack, the hitman who had fallen in love with a comfort woman, started asking Clara out again. In the end, they went to the forest near the river to spend time together.
Go.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
However, while they were doing the lovey-dovey thing, Jack accidentally found a gun in Clara's bag. He thought that Clara was one of the hitmen who wanted to kill him. But before he made a second mistake, Jack, who was afraid of being mistaken again, began to ask about the gun Clara was carrying. At that time, Clara immediately explained that she deliberately carried a gun every day because many comfort women were killed while working at night. Therefore, she deliberately carried the gun everywhere, just in case. While on the road, Clara suddenly began to express a request that Jack would take her away from this city and go with Jack wherever they went, because that was all Clara could do to show her love for Jack. Hearing this request, Jack only replied with a smile because he could not make a decision to take Clara away. However, the next day, apart from being tired of being a hitman for a long time, Jack, who kept thinking about Clara's request to go with him, finally rushed to Felix to explain his decision to stop being a hitman. Hearing Jack's decision to stop being a hitman, Felix initially accepted the request. He promised to let Jack go after he carried out the mission this time. However, right after the phone was hung up, Felix suddenly started contacting Matilda. He gave her a new mission to kill Jack right after she received the homemade gun from him. On the other hand, Jack, who realized that Felix would not just let him go, secretly began to reassemble the rifle he had made. On the day of handing over the weapons, Jack began to hand over the assembled weapons to Matilda, until finally he began to say goodbye, because today was the last day they met. Long story short, the scene then moves to the day of the carnival celebration, where everyone begins to gather. Jack meets Clara again, and explains that he has made the decision to invite Clara to leave the city to start a new life together with Clara. On the other hand, Matilda, who has received a mission from Felix to kill Jack, is seen getting into position to shoot at Jack. However, when she was about to open fire at Jack, the gun suddenly shot straight back, right into her face, which made Matilda die on the spot.
Who?
Apparently, on the last day before the handover process, Jack deliberately changed the gun to shoot backwards because he had realized that Felix would secretly send Matilda to kill him. Moments after Matilda was killed, he immediately told Clara to go towards the river. Jack promised to come back to see Clara after he finished his business. Because at this time, Jack still has to kill Felix, who is still targeting his life. Right after they meet each other, Jack quickly shoots at the man, until in the end, Felix has to die in Jack's hands. Even though he had managed to kill Felix, unfortunately, Jack was shot in the stomach. Jack, who was afraid of being unconscious, began to rush to meet Clara, who was waiting for him at the promised place. Finally, the movie The American closes with Jack, who has made it to Clara's destination because he has promised to take Clara away to start a new life.